Hi, I'm Soleil. I'm an angel investor and venture capital investor based in Sydney. Today, I'm going to be going through the core transaction documents for your priced round. Let's set the scene for this presentation. It's going to be a high-level outline of the core documents usually required for an Australian priced funding round. I am not a lawyer and this is not legal advice, and it's important to note that every deal is different. So I'd highly recommend you engage a lawyer when raising venture capital because it's complex and the stakes are high. So in a price round, investors purchase shares and in exchange, they become a shareholder in the company. We're going to go through the following documents that are commonly prepared, negotiated, and executed, or even amended as part of a priced round. The first is a term sheet. It's an agreement of the main deal terms, such as the amount that will be invested, the valuation, any investor rights, or board seats. This is a non-binding document, but it does provide the outline for the long-form documents, which we'll come to next. So these long-form documents, they are typically developed in parallel because you need all of them to work together and be coherent. So they're typically negotiated as a package. We'll step through each of these, the subscription agreement, the shareholders deed, and the company constitution. Then we have some governance docs, which are about board and shareholder resolutions. They're also prepared in parallel, but usually towards the end of the long drafting process of the long form docs. Formally signed after the transaction docs and final terms have been more or less agreed on. Then the final step of getting everyone to sign relevant documents, importantly for the funds to be sent over from the investor and for the company to issue shares. And this will also include updating the share register and also the cap table. So you can think of this as a 4-part process where some of the steps are done in parallel. So now we have a high-level overview. We will now step through each of these in a little more detail. Starting with the term sheet. Think of it as a summary of the deal, a blueprint for the investment. This is an important step to agree on of the main deal terms between the lead investor and the founders before then getting the lawyers involved to draft the long-form documents. It'll cover key terms like the total amount invested, the valuation, who gets a seat, and any special rights. Remember, it's not binding, but think of it like a serious handshake. But there may be legally binding clauses like confidentiality or even exclusivity. And once both parties have agreed and signed this, the lawyers use this as a guide for the long form legal docs. So now we have the long form docs to work on, and we're going to step through each of these in detail. So first to the subscription agreement. The subscription agreement is a formal purchase contract, which includes paying money and creating new shares. It will officially outline that, the investor is buying X number of new shares at X price and that the company agrees to issue these shares. There may also be warranties. Think of it as a fact check, a list of promises made by the company about the state of the business. So examples could include the company owns its code, that there are no secret lawsuits, and taxes are all up to date. It's important to note that this doc is only for newly created shares. And then if a founder was selling their own personal shares, this would be a share sale agreement instead. Then there are some final checklist things such as getting board approval and making sure all the legal docs are signed before money is sent over. So that's the subscription agreement. Let's move on to the shareholders deed. This deed is basically an agreement between the company and its shareholders and how they will work together after the deal is done. You could see it as setting out the detailed rules of the relationship. Some examples include how important company decisions are made, who can appoint directors and how the board operates, which decisions need investor or shareholder approval, how shares can be sold or transferred, what happens if a founder leaves, what information investors are entitled to, and what happens if the company is sold or raises more money. Typically, existing shareholders will need to sign this new deed or sign a short accession deed agreeing to be bound by it. So that's the shareholders deed. Let's move on to the constitution. A company constitution is like a company internal rulebook, and it sets out how the company is run and how important decisions are made. It'll cover things like how board meetings are run, how directors are appointed or even removed, how many directors are needed to make a valid decision. You may also hear this term referred to as a quorum. How the company can issue new shares or transfer existing shares, and how meetings and documents can be held electronically, such as via Zoom or Gmeet, so that they are still legitimate. Before even raising capital, you may already have a company constitution in place. But when a company raises a priced VC round, often this constitution needs to be amended or restated to reflect the new investment terms, such as creating a new class of shares for investors, such as preference shares, special or priority rights, for example, when a company is sold, or it could require investor approval for certain major company decisions. So, as the formal rulebook, it's generally updated during a VC round so that the company rules match the rights agreed with the investor. You may hear the term that you want the docs to be able to be read back to back and coherent. So this is why it's important to sometimes work on all of these docs in parallel. We're almost there with the docs, just some final governance approvals are now required. So the board and shareholder resolutions, these are the formal approvals needed to complete the investment. The board resolution, basically the directors are approving the investment. They're signing the main transaction docs and they're issuing new shares to the investor. Then we have the shareholders resolution. They need to approve actions such as agreeing to be updated to the updated constitution or issuing new shares. In a previous video, I've shared about preemptive rights. Go back and watch that video if you haven't had a chance to watch it yet. But if someone is waiving their preemptive rights, then this is where it's noted to allow the company to issue the new shares to the new investor. These resolution documents are generally much shorter than the main investment agreement, but they are necessary to formally approve the deal and make sure the company follows its existing rules. Now, there are sometimes other documents that are required, but this is highly deal dependent, and I'm just going to run through a few examples, but by no means is this an exhaustive list. So side letters, this is when a specific investor may need a special right that isn't being given to other investors. So sometimes I've seen this with, say, government-backed funds where they need reporting in a specific way because of government legislation. And this kind of reporting may not be relevant to any other investor. So it's a way to keep the custom rules separate from the main contracts. An IP assignment. An investor may want to be 100% sure the company owns all of its technology, such as the code and the designs, and may want a document that confirms this. A disclosure letter. Think of it like an exception list to the fact check or warranties. So, one example may be that the main contract says that there are no legal disputes, but then this letter may say, oh, there's a minor disagreement that we're currently working through. An investor's rights deed. So, this is for more larger and complex deals. An investor might have special rights listed in their own document rather than putting them in the general shareholders deed. This is unlikely to be required for a pre-seed or seed deal, but it's good to note for the larger, more complex deals as you get on with your rounds of capital. So here's a short but certainly not an exhaustive list of other deal specific documents you may need for your priced round. Once we've got all the docs in order, we're ready to sign them. The investor can send their funds over to the company and in exchange, the company can issue shares and make updates to the share registry and also to the cap table. So there we are, breaking down the core transaction documents in a price round in 4 phases of the deal process. Don't forget, you should always get sound legal advice because these documents are complex and they're tricky, but I hope this shares at a high level what are the core transaction documents for your priced round. Let me know if there are any concepts or terms you would love to know more about.